Hi, Rams. It's Miss Moreau. I just wanted to start this lesson about volume this week, okay? And I know it's very similar to what you've already learned. We're just going to be adding a little bit to it this week, okay? So, first, let's think about what you remember from fifth grade about volume. In fifth grade, you did learn to find the volume of rectangular prisms only. And we use the formula volume equals length times width times height. Now, on your shape here, let me change colors here. We would say that would be the length, and then maybe my width would be over here, and we would look for our height. Okay, so what does volume actually mean? All right, and that's what we're going to spend a little bit of time actually talking through what volume means and how the formula changes now once you get to middle school. And the reason that it changes is for other shapes, okay? So, this is a rectangular prism, right? It looks like a box, okay? But the total space inside of that 3D figure is called volume. That's what the definition of it is. The total space that is inside of it. We're not covering anything now. We would fill it up, okay? Wrong button here, sorry. So we measure our volume in what's called cubic units. Now, what this would mean is when we have our units, like say these were centimeters, our answer would say centimeters with a little 3, because that is 3 dimensions that we're working with now, a length, a width, and a height. Now, remember when we were finding area, you had a little 2, and those were square units. So if you're ever working with a problem and you see a little 2, that means it's always dealing with area. And if you're working with a 3, it's volume. Okay, now there are some things that we'll see that actually are working with area and volume in just a minute, and I will explain the difference in those. Okay, now volume on this problem would be how many little cubes of this it would take to fill this up. So let's look right here. How many units wide is it here? So if I wanted to count the squares that are along this side right here, how many squares is it across here? 1, 2, and 3. Now, if I wanted to look at the width here, I want to change colors on my pen because technically you're still counting this big cube here more than once because you're counting it in part of your length and width and height. So 1, 2, 3. I see 3 different cubes on that side. So my length is 3 units. My width is 3 units. And then now my height. Height, remember, is just how tall it is. So 1, 2, and 3 units right there. So this one will be 3 times 3 times 3. And this part is just a review from elementary, what you've done before. So when you solve this, you would just do 9 times 3 would be 27 cubic units. So if you took 27 of these little bitty cubes or little blocks or centimeter cubes that we have in class, it would create this shape. We just took the top one out to look at it there, okay? All right, so let's go to our next one here. What would be the volume of this? How many cubes would it take to fill this up? Okay, and we can count these. Okay, if I look at the length and width and height here, you can't always tell on this side because it doesn't have the number, but the height over here is going to be the same as the height on this side. So if I'm starting right here with my length, 1, 2, 3. And my width here is 1, 2. My height's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 3 by 2 by 5. Now, the difference here in sixth grade is now we look at it, the formula changes a little, and I'll show you that in just a second. But if we look at the whole base, think about it like a skyscraper, okay? How big is that bottom foundation? How many cubes, how many little squares does it take to put that whole floor on there? Well, it's 3 units wide and 2 units long. So this right here is my base, the foundation of it. That'd be 6 units times, let's say it's 5 stories tall. So all total, it would take 30 cubes to fill that in. Okay, the volume would be 30 cubic units. Now, the reason we looked at it that way as looking at that base is because our formula in sixth grade changes. We no longer use the formula length times width times height. I know it's very similar still, But what we do is we find the area of the base. We use volume equals, we call this big B times H. So we've been working with bases of other shapes recently. And those are always a lowercase b. Anytime you're working with volume, it's now a capital B. I know it feel like we should be choosing a different letter, but base is still base. They both are spelled the same, but they mean two different things here. So one is represented with a capital letter. So I'm going to draw a little picture here. Okay, here is my rectangular prism. Let's see how great I could do some artwork here. Not terrible, right? Okay, so when I'm looking at the base, I'm going to change colors here. I'm going to color in the base. That is that whole bottom face. In elementary, you learned them as faces. Yes, there are 6 faces on your rectangular prism, but we just pick one, the bottom one usually, and call it the base. Now, for a rectangular prism, the bottom and the top have the same measurement. But we take the area of this, like let's say this is your foundation for your skyscraper. And we would say every floor takes up that same amount of space. How much space does it take up for all the floors together? So we take our area of the base, which is length and width, right? So to find the area of your base, you do length times width, and then we do area of your base times your height. So it's still right now looking like the same formula from elementary because it still comes from length times width times height because your base is a rectangle right now. Now, if I changed this and gave you any other shape, if I gave you a cylinder or a trapezoid prism or something like that, then it would change because your base would change. That bottom shape would be different. But the biggest point right now, and you'll have to answer this and you're going to put it in your own words in a second, is to understand the difference between this formula right here and this formula right here. Okay? So if you're not sure, I'm going to go through it one more time for you. Okay? In 5th grade, you used length times width times height. Those were your 3 dimensions of your rectangular prism. In 6th grade, we only work with rectangular prisms, but on your formula sheet now, it has big B times H. But big B, your area of your base, as long as your base is a rectangle, you still use length times width to find the area of that rectangle, okay? All right, and we're going to do a couple of examples really quickly to walk you through what it means and what that looks like, okay? All right here. Okay, we're going to use that formula, big B times H. So we're no longer going to write it as length times width times height, okay? So big B, my area of my base. When we're in class, I always tell students, shade the base. So this is what I would do here is I would shade that base. Now, my base is a rectangle. So how do I find the area of that rectangle? Well, I would do 9 times 2 because it is a rectangular prism, a rectangle. So 9 times 2 is 18, but my height is 6 inches. So 18 times 6. Looks like 12 times 12, so be 100. Nope. 9 times 12, so 108. 18 times 6. Yeah, 108. So 108 inches cubed. So it's very similar to what you've already known. Okay. In the process, we still ended up multiplying our length times our width in here. But what that does is give us the area of the base. That's what a big B is, okay? We just have to keep referring to that because now you will no longer see the formula length times width times height. All right. Next one here. Oops. All right. Oh, this one gets a little bit trickier because we now have decimals, but we solve it the same way, okay? We go through and we say, what is my base? So what shape is it? My base is a rectangle, okay? The dimensions of it are 2 feet by 2.5 feet, okay? So to find the area of that rectangle, I'm still going to do length times width. So I'm going to put 2 times 2.5, okay? So 2 times 2.5 is going to be a 5. So the area of my base here is going to be 5 square feet. Okay, that's where my area comes in, the squared. Now I have to multiply it by the height. So 5 times 5.5. Okay, And when I multiply those, it would give me 27.5, which is going to be the volume this time. Feet cubed. Okay, so I just find the area of the base, multiply by the height. Now, a lot of times there are problems that will say, like, here's your rectangular prism. Your area of your base is going to be 5 square feet. What is the volume? Well, you're not looking for 3 different numbers because it already took out that first step right there. Okay, so just read really carefully when you see those kinds of problems. All right. What you're going to do next, the rest of this is what you're going to do in your Google Slides here, okay? First, you're going to go in here and you're going to type in here, explain how these two formulas are related. Basically, it's everything I've just explained in this video, okay? You're going to type it in, put your words here in your Google Slides to submit it. Then you're going to do this little maze. We've done these a lot in class. It shouldn't be too hard for you. I did the first example here. Okay, so we start here, and I circled it. Okay, right up here, you can click the shape and you can add a circle. Okay, I'll show you how to do that here. Some of you know. Okay, then I did my work right on here so you could see my process. Big B times H. You don't have to put it right on here, but it's really great if you do. Okay, but you'd have your 90 cubic centimeters. So I drew a little scribbly line. I used this to draw a scribbly line down here. So instead of shading it in like how we would in class, we would color it. I just drew a line that tells me that this would be the next problem that we did. Okay, so when I go through, I'll be looking for you to have your maze set up, and I'd love for you to, if you want to add your text boxes and put your work right here. That way, I can help figure out if you did make any mistakes, what it was that you did. Okay, but you're going to end up down here at this box right here, and then tell me the answer of this one once you get to the end. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.